point in global power dynamics. The Spanish-American War, though relatively brief, had profound and lasting consequences, particularly for Spain and the United States. Spain, once a vast colonial empire, found its influence dramatically waning. The United States, on the other hand, emerged onto the world stage as a new imperial power, ready to extend its reach beyond its continental borders. This conflict was not just about Cuba. Its shockwaves were felt across oceans, reaching distant archipelagos. The war signaled a shift, a moment where old empires crumbled and new ones began to take shape, fundamentally altering the map of international influence and control for decades to come. One of the most significant theaters of this war was surprisingly far from Cuba. It was in the Pacific, specifically in the Philippines, a Spanish colony for over 3 centuries. The U.S. Navy, under Commodore George Dewey, achieved a stunning and decisive victory at the Battle of Manila Bay in May 1898. This naval triumph effectively destroyed the Spanish fleet in the Pacific, leaving Spain's control over the Philippines incredibly vulnerable. The speed and completeness of this victory surprised many, including those in Washington, D.C., and suddenly presented the United States with a complex question: what to do with this vast territory and its millions of inhabitants? It was a question with no easy answers. The context of this period was one of fervent expansionism in some American circles, often termed manifest destiny, now looking overseas. The idea that the United States had a duty, or even a right, to expand its influence and governance was a powerful motivator for some policymakers and public figures. European powers had been carving up the globe for centuries, and the United States was now positioned to join this pursuit of colonial possessions. The Philippines, with its strategic location in Asia and its abundant natural resources, appeared as a valuable prize in this new era of global competition, a stepping stone to the markets of China and the East. This thinking significantly shaped the decisions made in the war's aftermath. Filipino revolutionaries, led by figures like Emilio Aguinaldo, had been fighting for independence from Spain long before the Americans arrived. They initially saw the Americans as liberators, allies in their struggle against Spanish colonial rule. The swift defeat of the Spanish forces by the U.S. Navy further fueled their hopes for an independent Philippine nation. However, the intentions of the United States were not yet clear to the Filipino people, or even perhaps entirely clear to the American leadership itself at the outset. This divergence in expectations and understanding would soon lead to further conflict and a new chapter of struggle for the Filipino people, one against a different foreign power. President William McKinley, the American leader at the time, faced a monumental decision regarding the fate of the Philippines. He was a devoutly religious man and reportedly spent many nights in prayer, seeking guidance on this complex issue. The options were varied: grant the Philippines full independence, allow another European power to take control, return it to Spain, or annex it as a U.S. territory. McKinley later claimed that he concluded, after much deliberation, that there was no other viable option but for the United States to take the Philippines, educate the Filipinos, and uplift and civilize and Christianize them. This decision reflected a mix of paternalism, economic interest, and geopolitical strategy prevalent at the time. The formal transfer of the Philippines from Spain to the United States was codified in the Treaty of Paris, signed on December 10, 1898. Under the terms of this treaty, Spain ceded not only the Philippines, but also Guam and Puerto Rico to the United States. In exchange for the Philippines, the United States agreed to pay Spain the sum of $20 million. This payment was framed by some as a purchase, though it was more accurately a financial settlement accompanying the spoils of war. The treaty marked the official end of the Spanish Empire's significant global presence and the clear beginning of America's overseas empire, a new role that would shape its foreign policy for the century to come. The U.S. Senate's ratification of the Treaty of Paris in February 1899 was not without significant debate and opposition. Anti-imperialists, including prominent figures like Mark Twain and Andrew Carnegie, argued vehemently against annexing the Philippines. They contended that acquiring overseas colonies was contrary to American democratic principles and the ideal of self-government. They warned of the moral and practical difficulties of ruling a distant people without their consent. Despite these strong objections, the expansionist faction, fueled by arguments of economic benefit, strategic advantage, and a sense of national destiny, ultimately prevailed. The vote was close, but it passed, sealing the Philippines' fate for the time being. It is an interesting fact that the $20 million payment to Spain was, in essence, for infrastructure and assets Spain was leaving behind, rather than for the sovereignty of the people themselves. This sum, equivalent to several $100 million today, was a considerable amount, but paled in comparison to the perceived strategic and economic value of the islands. The decision to acquire the Philippines was a pivotal moment, setting the stage for a long and often troubled relationship between the two nations. It also led directly to the Philippine-American War, a brutal conflict that erupted as Filipinos resisted American rule, seeking the independence they believed they had earned.